Hi, in this video I'm going to show some various ways that we can get the difference between two dates. So the most easy, if we wanted to get the days between the two dates, the most basic function, or it's not even a function, the most basic way we can do that is just to subtract the end date from the start date. So we want to get the number of days between these two dates. All I need to do is put an equal sign, select the end date, subtract the start date, and I've got the number of days between those two dates. Now let's say that I would just want to get the work days. How many work days are there between two different dates? Well, there's a function in Excel that will do that, and it's called net work days. I can just go ahead and just type in the first couple letters of it, and here it goes. It's here, and just double click that, and it's telling me to add the start date. So I'll go ahead and add the start date, comma, so we have a comma here, and then the end date. And if that's all I really wanted, I can just close parentheses, press enter, and it's going to give me 8 work days that are between the start date and end date. Of course, between these two dates is a holiday, Christmas. So what we want to do, if we want to exclude that, we remember earlier we had the formula, the parameters that we can put into this function, and this optional parameter is the holidays. So we can put a comma here and insert that holiday and press enter, and that will give us the amount of work days between the start date and end date plus that holiday. So let's figure out that we want to do a difference between a start date and end date in months. Well, there's a month function. You just press equal and type in MON, and look, we have a month function here. Double click that, and it's basically going to give us the serial number back for the date. So if we select this cell and we close parentheses, it's going to tell us that that is the 12th month. So it's going to be 1 to 12, right? But let's say, well, we wanted to figure out how many months are between the start date and end date here. So what we need to do is subtract that end date and type in month here from that start date. So double click this to get the parentheses open. Click that for the A9 cell, close parentheses, and there we have 6 months. Now one thing about this is it only calculates the difference between a start date and end date based on the month. So it's based on a 12-month cycle. So what that really means is if I've put 2009 here, you would think that it would give me 18 months, but it doesn't. I press equal, 2009, 2010, it only gives you 6 months. So really it only counts the month here, June to December, 6 months. I'll show you a function later on that can help you count start dates that span multiple years. Let's move this back to 2010, and there you go. Now let's say that we want to count the years in between two dates. Very similar to the month function. We put an equal sign, and there is a year function here. I type in YE, it gives me some options for year. Double click that, and we have this as the year. I'll select that B14, close parentheses, and what does that give me? It gives me 2010. But let's say I wanted to find the difference between this one and this one. Well, we know eyeballing it's going to give us 10 years. But if we had some different numbers, this is what the formula would look like. We have year. I can double click that and select the start date, close parentheses, press enter, and it'll give us 10 years. If I change this to 2001, it should give us 9 years. And there you go, we have 9 years. So let's say, for example, you wanted to get into some more detail about the differences between two dates, and it spans multiple years. Now, if we wanted to do something like figure out how many days are between the start date and end date here, we would have to basically include many of the formulas for month, for year, and write a big hairy calculation for that. But that can be done with a dated if function. Now this function really does not show up in the insert function. It's one of those functions that Microsoft introduced in, I believe, Excel 2000, but they never really follow up with any documentation. So that, for example, if we did an insert function here and typed in dated if to find it, it does not show up. It's not one of those functions. It's a hidden function when you really kind of think about it. How do we use a dated if? So let's get right into it. So I type in dated if, open parentheses, but now we see we have a little tip here. And there's three parameters that we're going to put in here. First is the start date, and then the end date. And as I said earlier, we want to find out the days, how many days are in between the start date and end date. Well, to figure that one out, there are a couple parameters that we can use, and it's the interval. So we can either find out how many months are in between, or how many days, how many years, how many months are there excluding the years, how many days excluding the years, and how many days excluding the years and months. So let's go back into sheet 1. Now we'll go ahead and delete this. Let's say we wanted to find out how many days occur between the start date and end date. I would have to use those intervals, one of those interval parameters, in double quotes. So the interval parameter for days is D. So I just put D in double quotes, do a close parentheses, press enter. We've got 3,479 days between these two. How many months do we have between these two? Well, if I go back in here and I just change that D into an M, we have 114 months. What about years? Well, let me go back in here, change that M to a Y. I bet you'll say 9, and we have 9 years. But let's say, for example, we wanted to figure out how many years, months, and days are between these two dates. Well, we already figured out how many years are between there. So let's type in years to label that one. After 9 years, how many months do we have between here? Well, let's put in the label here. To figure that one out, we're going to use the months excluding years. So what this does is it gives us a complete calendar month between the dates as if they were in the same year. Right? So between June and December, there should be 6 months. So let's put that in there. Put equal sign, dated if, open parentheses, start date, comma, end date, comma, and we're going to use the YM interval parameter, months excluding years. Go back here, open parentheses, YM. Now this should give us 6 months. So it's going to pretend like that is basically between this June and December, it's all in 1 year. So the start date, end date, there's 9 years, and then there's 6 months. How many days? Well, let's put a days label here. And the interval parameter we're going to use is this one. Days that are excluding years and months. So it's going to give us the calendar days between some dates as if they're in the same month or the same year. So we go back to our sheet 1, between the 20th and 29th, that should be 9 days. So let's put that into this little function, all right? Dated if, open parentheses, start date, comma, end date, comma, and then what was it? Oops. That was month. That was month day, MD. So let's go ahead and put quotes, MD, close quotes, parentheses, should be 9 days, and there we got it, 9 days. So between the start date and this end date, we've got 9 years, 6 months, and 9 days. Very cool function, this dated if function. Doesn't show up in the insert function window, but this is a very nice function to use if you want to figure out the difference between two dates and they span multiple months and multiple years. Hope this helps. Thanks for watching.